are which are for the tools that we use. So there's Git extension which is already built in when you download Visual Studio Code, and it ships with everything already installed. Just as an overview, Git is a source control manager, and it's generally on your left of the screen, and it can do basically everything which you can do via command line, just not in a better way and directly from the IDE. I'm gonna start with the commit feature. So as you can see on the picture, which is on the top right, that is how all your changes will be shown in Visual Studio Code, and you have three options. Which one of these is the stage changes, which is basically committing your changes without writing code. And when you click that document, you can have a differential view where you can find all your documents and all the changes as well. So there are some shortcuts when you're having a git commit, which is Control plus Enter for Windows and Command Enter for Mac. And this makes it easier for you to state changes, as you can just have them visualized in front of your eyes. There is another menu, which is More Actions, and that has all the other commands such as pulls and rebasing, merging, commits, and all that. We can have that demo later on a live project maybe. And so the next thing is branches and tags. So so there's a thing called command palette in Visual Studio Code, which is basically like a terminal inside Visual Studio Code. And you can open that up using Control-Shift-P in Windows or Command-Shift-P in Mac, basically. And you can search for commands for Git, such as checkout or creating branches or pulling or rebasing, and everything which Git does, basically, you can just search up and it's going to come and it's already integrated with your IDE. So the Git checkout branch, when you type Git checkout, it's going to pop up with all the branches you already have on your current project. And you can also create a branch, so it's going to link from the master or the branch you're choosing it from. Any questions? Okay. So Git status bar actions. So there are two status bars. Basically the same status bar, but it's in two forms. One of them has, so the first picture on the right, it says that you have one commit which is not staged, and the other one says it needs to sync up with your remote repository. So all these actions, they can tell you if your current commits are staged or they are not staged, or in what form they are actually existing in your IDE right now. So there is a synchronize changes button, which is the icon with the cloud and in the status bar next to the indicator. And you can just push that. It's going to synchronize all the changes which you pushed and which are not on the remote repository. And if they are not in any upstream branch, it's going to set it up. Okay, Carter indicator. So this is specific to Visual Studio Code. So there are three types of indicators. One is the red triangle. As you can see on the photo, that we have a small red triangle below the using. And so that indicates the lines which have been deleted. There's another, there's blue bar, which comes on the left of your code, which states all the lines which have been modified. And there's a green line, which I don't think it's in the photo, but there's a green bar which shows the lines which have been added. So you can quickly trace which lines were deleted, which lines were added, and which were modified. So you can play around with it and get your code right. Merge conflicts. So this is another visual way where Visual Studio Code basically is ahead of all the other IDEs. And you basically have two sorts of bases where there's current change and there's incoming change. And the merge conflicts can be handled by basically Visual Studio Code itself. And so you have the left arrows, which are the current changes which are currently present in your code, and you have the test changes, which is the incoming change. So you can basically sort which change you want to keep, and then just stage them or just merge them. So it's gonna prevent you from actually doing it all in a command line form. So yeah, that's an overview for Git, which is already built in Visual Studio Code. Any questions?
Want to do a survey? See, so in the room in Toronto, how many people use Visual Studio Code already?
Time.
Yeah. So on the phone we had about 4 hands go up, and then on the phone, I'm not sure if there's a way to vote in here. There's a raised hand. How do you do that?
People can do it, I think. It's on the right.
On the right hand side.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it might be complicated for people, but oh, we got a raised hand. Okay. So if you can't raise your hand, just shout out loud if you use Visual Studio Code. Peter raised his hand. So that's good. Anybody else?
Yep. Daryush can't raise the hand.
Okay, great.
All right. Okay, so moving on to SonarQube. So a lot of people are actually using SonarQube for code analyzing and bugs and all that. So we have an extension called sonarlint, which is officially the extension from SonarQube for IDEs. So it's an extension that helps you fix and detect quality issues, and it's going to highlight whenever you're typing code. So it also works on a live window as well. So we're going to go through how to set this up and a quick demo. So there's a video which is on the right. I can say that again, and we can see sonarlint in action. So you can see it says changes condition, and then you have a bulb pop-up which opens the description of the rule, which is linked to SonarQube. This is basically a small demo how sonarlint is working. It also provides you an option of opening the rule book. So if you have any rules which you want to read before coding, or any other rule which sonarlint detects is not right, it's going to pop you up with like a bulb, and you can click on that and open the rules, so you can basically see where you're going wrong.
And so that's open source, right? So there's
that's open
available for any developer to begin using.
So there's no special requirements for using sonarlint. Only requirement is you should have Java runtime installed. Minimum version is 8, but I think everybody's laptops already have that installed. Sometimes there's a bug for you in Visual Studio where it doesn't automatically detect your JRE runtime. So you can go into your settings of Visual Studio Code and actually declare that. And I have an example down below stating how you can declare your runtime environment. Okay, so connected mode. So connected mode is where sonarlint, you can connect your sonarlint extension to SonarQube. It works in basically 2 forms. You can connect it to a separate project, or you can connect it to a SonarQube server. And so the minimum requirement is SonarQube version should be more than 5.6. And then you can manually trigger sonarlint every time you can change a setting. You can just go to the command palette, which is basically, I think, Control-Shift-P, as I mentioned, and you can just type this command, update sonarlint binding to SonarQube, and it's going to basically rebuild all the settings. And whenever you open a file, if there's a error, it's going to pop you up with specific rule sets. So the only requirement for connected mode is you should have either a server or you have a specific project you want to tag your sonarlint extension to. And the minimum version is 5.6. Okay, so this is an example of the setting I use on my laptop for using sonarlint. So it basically requires only 3 things, which is server ID, URL, and the token. And the token should be basically in source code management form. So, and you can basically define this for every server, and you can build it again on the command palette. And whenever you open a project, you can define which rules you want to set for either Python, C++, or JavaScript. I think these are the 3 which are supported.
Sorry, quick question here.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Daryush here. Have you used PyLint versus, what are your thoughts on PyLint versus sonarlint? for
I
Python?
haven't used the other one yet,
Mhm.
so I'm
Have,
afraid I can't compare those two.
have you used the sonarlint with Python?
Yeah.
Okay. And what are your findings? What are your general thoughts?
So I think it's pretty extensive when it comes to using it with Python, because you already have a linter which comes with Visual Studio Code
Right.
for Python. So that's also something which is extensive. But if you're using separate rule sets where you have some rule sets for defining functions or classes,
Mhm.
that's where sonarlint I think excels more compared to a a linter which already comes installed.
Good. Good. Thanks. Give it a try. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a good question, Darius. So we should check with the Python working group to see what their thoughts are,
Yep. Yep.
if any of them have tried sonarlint or compared it to PyLint.
Right. Okay. Good. Very helpful. Thanks. Back to you.
So that's sonarlint for Visual Studio Code. We have another one which is basically targeted for Salesforce developers, which is PMD, Apex PMD plugin. And PMD is an open source code analyzer, and it also works with Apex code, so all the CLS files and Visual Force files as well. So it's basically, it performs in a similar fashion as sonarlint performs. It's just only triggered and tailored for Apex code. So the current actions supported by Apex, PMD, and the requirements are, so you can run analysis on an open file. You just have to save your file, and it's going to run in the environment. It can run analysis on a saved file, or it can run analysis on an entire workspace. So if you have a separate project with a list of all CLS files, and so it can run analysis on the entire workspace. It can run analysis on a single file. So basically, I think everything is covered when it comes to PMD, and the only requirement is that you should have a runtime version of 1.7 or more, which is very basic. So, yeah, I think that.
Okay, cool. That was the presentation. Just wondering if anybody had any questions related to sonarlint or Visual Studio Code. I don't think we have any Salesforce developers in the room, so we were hoping that we could get them to try out PMD in their IDE, because what happens in the pipeline, so the Jenkins pipeline for the Salesforce development team, is that checkmarks triggers a security scan of their Apex code and identifies vulnerabilities, right? That scan takes quite a long time. That slows down your build, right? So what we want to do is, the concept of shift left. We want to encourage developers to occasionally run a security scan locally, maybe sometimes before they check in their code into Git, right? So catch those vulnerabilities as early as possible in your workflow, so you don't slow down the rest of the pipeline and impact the rest of your team, right? So it's kind of like taking ownership or taking accountability of providing good quality code, secure code, right? So that's the notion there, right? And so we can also extend that to other programming languages, right? And so in future sessions, we can show how you can do local scans. We've had previous sessions where we've invited Veracode. Veracode has a product called Greenlight. And again, Greenlight is an IDE extension. And again, it'll just scan your code for static code analysis to identify vulnerabilities. So it's the best place to do it is, when the developer's writing code, right? It's probably the most cost effective for a team and for an organization to catch code quality bugs and security vulnerabilities as quickly as possible. So that was, we only had that on the agenda. We have half our team here. The other team is working on a 3-day workshop with Exhibia Labs. So we had Exhibia Labs present to you guys, I think, about a month ago, I think, DevOps Cafe, and they do release management or release automation. And so The release management team by Chad Weeb and the DevOps team have come together to do an evaluation of Exhibia Labs, primarily for Salesforce development. So for our online access, advisor portal, and digital capture e-signature projects, and eventually the Gamma project that's going to get started as well, right? So essentially any of our teams that are working on the Salesforce platform, we're looking for proper release management practices, and so we're trying out Exhibia Labs. Specifically, XL Release is the name of the product. So by the end of tomorrow, we should have a good idea of how it works and a good assessment of whether we think that's the right tool or not to deploy here at IGM. Anybody have any questions on other topics or questions around other tools, DevOps, cloud strategy, anything in general? Anybody want to raise any questions? Any food for thought? Otherwise, I'm going to give you guys back half an hour.
It's Darius share if I may.
Go ahead, Darius.
Yep. One thing I found with Visual Studio Code is I use Vim a lot, and migrating to Visual Studio, you have to set your environment variables or environment for Python to pick up the virtual environments in Visual Studio. I found this to be a little bit cumbersome, and it's a little tedious to get it to work. I was wondering if anybody has had any issues there, and if so, we can probably set up a quick 15 minutes in future to go through the exercise of how to set up your Python virtual environments on Visual Studio. That would maybe another small topic.
Have you looked into that at all?
I didn't. So I didn't work with virtual environment in Visual Studio Code.
Mm-hmm.
That's something which I prefer opening up in a command line.
Right.
But no, I can look into that and see how cumbersome it gets. Because right now, like, I don't have any idea. Because only way I've used basically Python in Visual Studio Code is basic scripting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if there's any other virtual environment or Anaconda environments which I'm using, so I just prefer to open that up in a command line.
Yeah, that works as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still a good question though. Yeah. Again, another great topic for the Python working group. I'm sure folks like Stuart Williams will have a lot to say about this. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, I think we're good, guys. Let's wrap up, and we'll give you back half an hour.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys.